welcome to BCN's webinar today, all around gaining visibility you need to cut costs and forecast for the future. Thanks ever so much for joining us. Lovely to have you with us today. So first off, just to kind of go through the agenda, the points we're going to cover are, what are we seeing now from over the years, from where we've seen data, what's the picture that we have now, and then what are some of the challenges we see in the wholesale industry in particular around data today. We're then going to introduce one of our wonderful customers, Cutwel, who are going to talk a little bit about how they've been using data to drive decisions. We're then going to talk through, how can we get ready for the next steps? What does this journey look like? And then therefore, what does the roadmap look like for us? We have got a Q&A session at the end, but I would really like to encourage people. This is a live webinar, so if you want to ask questions at any point during the presentation, please just use the chat button in Teams and just pop a chat in there. We've got our amazing Sinead just monitoring the chat, who'll let me know if there's any questions from anybody. So without further ado, I would like to introduce everyone. So for myself, so I'm Emma Portlock. I head up new business here at BCN, and I also head up the Microsoft relationship. Microsoft are one of our kind of key vendors here. So really lovely to meet you all, and I will hand over to Andy.
Thanks, Emma. Hi, everyone. I'm Andy. I work as a data specialist at BCN. My role is basically working with our customers to help them get the most value from their data in whatever way that's that very broad area we'll cover. Rob, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Rob Roberts. I'm the head of business transformation at Cutwel. So my background is delivering transformation programs across various industries with a focus on using data and technology really to improve performance. For those of you who don't know Cutwel, so we serve quite a broad client base in engineering and manufacturing. So provide tool and solutions that help our customers either produce something or maintain something.
Amazing, thanks Rob. And last but by no means least, over to you, Mark. Oh, Mark, I think you might be on mute. We still can't hear you, Mark. I don't know if you're having technical problems. Let's see if
that
there
should be
we
okay,
can go. Yes, there we go. See, proves we're live.
My name's Mark Mitchelson. I'm a principal at Freeman Clarke, providing fractional CIO services to our client base. My background very much in manufacturing, engineering, distribution, and business services. A number of examples that I will hopefully surface throughout the course of the discussion today.
Excellent, thank you, and thank you team for joining me today. So we're just going to do a poll first off, just to ask you, what's your biggest challenge when it comes to forecasting? So again, you will find this in the chat or on the front of your screen. If you could just press what is most appropriate for you, that would be really helpful. And you just press the radio button and press submit, and that should come through into our chat so we can start seeing what the responses are. So we're seeing quite a lot of people of lack of real-time data. That's absolutely something that we see with our customers. Of course, now I've said that, manual processes now come head to head. Yep. So quite a few people seeing quite similar things across the board. So yeah, really interesting the kind of responses and what you guys are seeing. And kind of that leads us into, where are we now with data? What's kind of created the data problem? So, clients, when you look sort of 20 years ago, there were emerging technologies like ERP systems, CRM, kind of basic CRM. So we started with those, and all of a sudden, Microsoft had done its thing with its OS operating system. Word, Excel came, so Excel then, grew exponentially. So we saw that kind of 20 years ago. What's then happened as time has gone on, we've then added other data sources. So we had the huge migration from Microsoft from kind of hosted solutions into 365, kind of that 8 years ago, where we saw OneDrive, SharePoint. That drives a whole load of data, more, the unstructured type data. We've then seen a huge cloud adoption, and we've got B2B, we've got e-commerce, you've got people accessing through mobile phones. That's created another data store. And then building on from that, we've then seen API integrations in order to kind of give predictive analysis and the Internet of Things. So, you know, can I predict when my fridge is going to break so that I can repair it before it's actually broken? And then finally, you know, buzzword of the day, but actually, you know, when I started my career 25 years ago in IBM, we did AI then, but it just used to take 18 months to 2 years to do. But in the last, you know, even in just the last 6 months, the growth we've seen in AI and kind of real-time dashboards and really having that insight into your business. But again, that's produced data sources. So all of these things that we've done in the last 20 years often for companies have caused multiple different silos of data. And the problem we're now facing is, how do you get insights across? You know, what we set up in those days was best of breed for each of those things, but how do we now get true insight across all those data sources to make sense of it, to move our business forward, and to know that what we're actually saying about our business is the actual truth? So moving on to kind of delve into that in a bit more, I'm going to hand over to Mark, who's going to talk us through some of the challenges we're actually seeing, particularly in wholesale, around data. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks so much. So yeah, particularly here, we started to group these by what we've been seeing in the marketplace, particularly over the last 18 months, and some of these are a lot more recent, but trying to group these into themes. I mean, we looked at the themes there of what we just spoke about in the poll, lack of the real-time data visibility, how we look at return on investment for addressing some of these challenges, and looking at the opportunities due to poor forecasting on what the impacts of them may be. So I've got some real world examples of this. So if I take first the lack of real-time data, working with a client, UK arm of an international fish supply pack distribute business. The arm being in this country, operating across Grimsby and London. They have 2 service lines. They deliver packed fish to supermarkets, is line number 1, and line number 2 is local deliveries, fresh fish to food service businesses. So they have a common fish store, and the fish that they manage is a complex beast where it is stored at minus 60 degrees, has to be thawed to minus 20 degrees to get into the production chain, and then obviously then is thawed further for the point of packing. So there's a complex process required. So we've got 2 service lines now operating almost entirely as independent businesses for all intents and purposes, with a common fish stock and no single visibility of what's going on. Food service business runs off Excel spreadsheets, emails, etc., completely unstructured in the way they're approaching. The supermarket business lines running from aged on-prem BI systems, ERP and BI systems. So a great deal of challenge already in what's going on in each of the business lines, who's consuming stock, what the stock needs to be, at what stage the freeze process, the thaw process, needs to be at, and how we're managing that down into the service lines. Not having that full sight of what's going on leads to a huge number of challenges and issues for that business. Apart from the very obvious ones about managing stock value, and how much stock is held, we get into then issues with a business that knows its demand very well, the supermarket business. It knows exactly what it needs to draw on a day-by-day basis for satisfying those supermarket demands. But the food service business is completely opposite. A sunny day tomorrow will generate a significant rise in sales, and that could be easily a 60 or 70% rise in sales on the day, just by the very fact that the sun comes out and shines. And if you think of similar businesses, ice cream being a really good example from my Unilever days, where the sun comes out and it attracts demand. So we've got now the inability to understand what's coming ahead we haven't got sight of what stock and what is available and what can be moved through the freeze process and the thaw process, obviously in freeze process, the thaw process in time to satisfy that demand. And all this is done because we can't see in real time what our holdings are across both businesses and act in a single calibrated way. We've worked with that business. We've gone live with some solutions for that and changed that dramatically. Still some way to go as we fine tune, having gone live very recently. But that's a real success story of being able to change those platforms and address those challenges.
That's amazing, and I can absolutely also concur with the hot weather and ice cream. My kids definitely plug me for lots of those when it's hot weather. So I guess then moving on to the second challenge that we're seeing, Mark, then the difficulty in proving that ROI, right? We know some of these things take a little time. How do we actually prove the ROI on these types of things?
I think the next example that I will use is a business that I've been working with in the last 12 months that international manufacturer of fixings and fittings, and I suspect might even be a Cutwel customer. In the Midlands, HQ'd in Birmingham, 12 manufacturing sites globally. They've grown quickly through a number of acquisitions. Some of those latterly have been PE based. And obviously the drive, therefore, on ROI has been that much more acute than anywhere else. We looked at the challenge they had about managing the stock globally through acquired businesses, all on different platforms, different systems, different ways of working, and different nomenclature in their product lines. And it was absolutely challenge that everyone, I think, will recognise about how do we get to a point of that. And what we started to look at was designing. We did a quick study on what the underlying data structures were, the locations, etc., and focused in on a smaller component. So we focused on 3 of those locations that were running similar product lines, had similar sector challenges, etc. So we had some commonality that we're able to look at those designs, and built out a platform that was able to aggregate that information, use some of the data tools and the AI tools sitting in product, and in this particular case it was a demo product, to begin to create a proof of concept and a proof of value. And in doing that, we learned a lot about what the challenges were in the data inside the organisation, what was happening in the market, and how we could efficiently surface that to finance teams at one end of the business and the sales teams at the other, so they could actually go for the growth that they were looking for. Tuning that model as we went over a period of time, we then built out a very effective platform for addressing their needs, in lieu of trying to boil the ocean and change all the ERPs across the organisation. We're able to do that. Operational gains there, the jump in OTIF was just astonishing. It was a significant step forward, to the point where they were starting to win awards in what they've managed to achieve. The PE house was backing this was so absolutely delighted with the results that we were able to go back and seek further investment and roll out. And I think that was the message I want to get across. Having designed that and got it and proved it at a smaller scale, with a scale-out plan, we were able to go back and justify with quantified ROI to gain the investment achievements. And the big news from that is that the growth in that business has allowed them to make 2 subsequent acquisitions that have fallen into the same model. So it's a real success story, just by looking at things in a slightly different way.
Excellent. Thank you. That's really good insight. And I'd just take the opportunity, if people want to ask questions, a few of you weren't here at the beginning, please just do use the chat icon in Teams, and we will answer any questions or any comments from things you're hearing. And I guess just finally, just to kind of quickly round off then, Mark, if we're looking for missed opportunities due to poor forecasting, if you've got an example of someone you've worked with on that?
Absolutely, and maybe not quite as great a positive message, but one that's worth sharing. I was working with an international manufacturer and distribution of steel products, grown through acquisition, bought a number of distressed assets across Europe and Australia, again, all on varying platforms, no consolidated strategy, no attempt to bring those businesses together and have common data platform or visibility across, just trading as independent entities. Very successful in doing that. As the market started to change, some of which was caused by nation states playing politics and starting to try and manipulate markets, the game changed, and all of a sudden, from being a cash generating business that was very profitable, they started to suffer and things got tight, and therefore the work that was going on commonality and sharing and visibility started to be canned. They got to a point where some big contracts with clients were coming from renewal, and a particular contract in question was worth several £100 million of euros a year, was predicated on supply of steel on a just-in-time basis to a very well-known manufacturer of diggers, earth movers, and similar heavy plants that paint them mostly in yellow. I'll leave it to your imagination who that might be. And that contract was just lost, resulting in one of the steel assets closing because it was no longer a profitable stream of business, and the loss of around 1,500 jobs, which was very disappointing. But it was generated simply because the demand, the just-in-time demand, needed the visibility of stock through EDI to be able to progress that contract, and it was a game changer. And it was as simple as that. The inability to see stock down the supply chain prevented hundreds of millions of pounds of business in that organisation, and that's just a stark message for me. And we just were unable to get in there quick enough to resolve that in the short term. They've subsequently done something about this, by the way. There is a positive upside, but that contract was lost and one of the steel assets closed.
Thank you. Really brings it home, doesn't it? That kind of example. And we've just had in the chat Amber agreeing with you that forecasting was absolutely critical, because if you forecasted poorly and ran out of stock, that resulted in lost sales and disappointed customers. From her experience in retail. So thank you for that insight, Amber. Great, thank you ever so much for that, Mark. We're just going to do another quick poll just to see, so people that weren't here at the beginning, if you might miss this, we're just going to do a poll. What tools are you currently using for forecasting? So some of you might be using Excel, ERP, CRM, you might be as far advanced as AI, or you might not have anything like that at the minute. So just be interested to kind of see from the people on the webinar what kinds of things you're using. So yeah, lots of Excel. We see that across lots of our customers. My nemesis, Excel, not good at Excel. Yeah, really interesting. Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. So moving on, we introed at the beginning one of our fabulous customers, Cutwel. Rob is with us today, and Rob's going to talk us through. We're just going to ask him a few questions around what Cutwel have done regarding sort of data and visualizations and things. And just as a little bit of background, if you missed Rob at the beginning, Cutwel is all about precision and cutting tools. So I'm going to hand over to Rob. Well, I'm going to ask some questions of Rob that we're going to take you through. So lovely for you to join us today, Rob. Thank you ever so much. For those of you that might have missed the introduction, would you mind just repeating like who you are, your role, and an overview of the company? Would that be okay?
Yeah. So I'm Rob Roberts. I'm head of business transformation at Cutwel. As Emma mentioned, we're a precision tool manufacturer and a precision tool supplier. A bit of my background. So I've worked in kind of transformation across multiple industries now, with a focus on data and technology to improve performance. So Cutwel serves quite a broad client base in engineering and manufacturing. So kind of we tend to draw on our varied kind of customers and suppliers, so we get to do things like this and find out what's going on in other areas.
Amazing, thank you. And I guess for those of us that maybe don't know your sector that well, what kind of things are we seeing happening? Are you seeing any key trends, challenges, or shifts in priorities, those types of things?
Yeah, so from a sector perspective, I think it's clear to me, not just with some of our competitors, but some of our customers as well, that data and visibility are becoming critical. I think everyone's realizing that the value of the data that they hold. Everybody holds it, everybody produces it, but I think everyone's realizing the value of it. But clients are expecting us and other suppliers not just to provide products, but to kind of work collaboratively with them now and bring insight. And to support them in a way that goes beyond kind of a traditional customer and supplier relationship. So sharing insight, they'll have insight on us, we'll have insight on them. And I think because data is becoming more readily available to people are more willing to share it.
Yeah, and I guess that really then helps push towards things like efficiency, that digital optimization, managing your stock, all of those types of things. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. So I guess if we're then bringing it into, really what happened with you guys, like, why you engaged us and your account manager, what kinds of things were you looking at? What was the challenge that you were actually struggling with at the time?
So our biggest challenge was realizing how much data we had, but not having any kind of real access to it or to action it efficiently. So as I said before, we've always had strong operational capability, but access to information wasn't always fast, and it definitely wasn't consistent, which meant that we'd delay decisions or opportunities for growth. I think sometimes, or with having data now and insight now, delays that you didn't realize were there. You've realized how much time you've wasted by not having this at your fingertips.
Excellent. So what did you do to approach that problem?
Well, first and most importantly, we engaged BCN because we needed
well answered, Rob. Well answered.
But I think what BCN brought was just structure to it. I think we all kind of knew what was required, but the structured approach to it and the fact that we need to build a reliable data foundation, that was key to it for us.
Okay. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Getting those foundations right so that you're actually reporting on the right kind of data in the first place. So after we'd done that, what changed? What have you seen as the outcome?
Well, definitely faster access to accurate data, and accurate data being the main thing. I think everybody trusts the data now. I think we've gone through, we've produced reports and dashboards and stuff, and I think there's some of the adoption requires a bit of work sometimes, but once everyone's in, I think everyone trusts that the data is correct, and then can obviously action or take appropriate action on the back of that.
Brilliant. And I guess, as customer to customers, the other customers will be listening on this. What kind of, strategic advice could you give? What should others in your sector be thinking about?
Firstly, take a real look at where your data is now. So it has to be sound before you start this, and if it's not, then that's where you start. I imagine the journey with BCN. Yeah, if it's not already sound, start there. But then know your problem statement, kind of know what you're trying to achieve, and stay out of solution mode. I think you've got to stay on the other side of the table sometimes. We definitely did. We had ideas on a solution, but I think sometimes just knowing what we want to achieve and allowing the solutions to kind of come to us and then us to choose was key to that. and then involving the right people. So kind of a broad spectrum in the business. So we've had some salespeople, some warehouse people, all the way up to the CFO involved. Because people have different nuggets of information across the business, and they know how to use certain bits of information. A CFO might not know all the intricacies of the warehouse data, and vice versa. And then really just make sure that you know how to measure what you're doing. So sometimes that means doing it in sections, but really understand ROI and what you're getting from it.
Excellent. Thank you ever so much, Rob. That's been really, really insightful. Really appreciate you taking the time out to talk us through that. So now it's time for another poll. So interested this time, which area would you benefit most from improved visibility in your organisation? I think we have that poll. Maybe the poll isn't working. Maybe tech has let me down today. I don't think it's working right now. So let's just crack on, and we'll maybe do that poll in a moment. So I'm going to hand over to Andy on this bit. Oh, and see, look, sorry, Andy, I've now stolen your thunder. We now do have the poll. So let's do it again. Which area would most benefit from improved visibility in your organisation? Yeah, quite a few answers. Yeah, the inventory and supply chain. We do see that a lot of the time. Yeah, everyone's pretty much answering around that. Yeah, very much all around that inventory and supply chain. Excellent. Great. Thank you for the answers. Right, Andy, I won't steal your thunder any longer. So talk us through what can we do about this, Andy?
Great, thanks, Emma. So when it comes to looking at where we can get started with data and how we can start to make the most of these opportunities, you can think, let's start by looking at the technology and figuring out that solutions. And I think it's that's not the best place to start. Is you have to look at it from ignore the technology. Let's look at it from the people and strategy side of it first, and make sure those are right. And that's how we kind of start in this area and let those lead what we're going to be focusing on. So from the data ownership and leadership side of things, we first need to start off with identifying who can be the champion, who's going to drive these initiatives within the organization. Some companies, they've started to appoint chief data officers. I actually saw a stat that Forbes estimates of the Fortune 1000 companies, up to 70% of those now have got a chief data officer in place, which really just shows the importance of having this role and what they can help to deliver. It doesn't have to be someone with that formal chief data officer title, though, as long as it's someone that's identified who they are the person who is responsible for this. They're going to be the person who is really waking up, and their focus is going to be on driving that initiative to leverage data for growth and efficiency. Could be a CIO, could be CFO, could be a dedicated head of data. Whoever it is, they would just need to have that champion identified, and they know that this is what they're focusing on. In tandem with that, it really helps drive that cultural shift within the business. So from the top down, it needs to be they need to be pushing that we're actively promoting making decisions based on the data. So this could be simple. It's quite simple habits. So starting any regular management meetings by reviewing key data dashboards that show performance against KPIs and metrics. It can be praising managers who are bringing insights to the wider business that are supported by data. It could be pushing back on people who are bringing assertions that aren't backed up by evidence, backed up by data. Really, it's just got to be that from the top down, it's showing that data matters to us, as ultimately, if that message is coming from the top down, the rest of the organization is going to follow. Hand in hand with this, we need to also make sure that data governance is considered and factored in as we start on this journey. And data governance can sound a bit technical, but ultimately it's making sure that we have the rules for how the data is going to be used. So who owns what data, who is responsible for making sure that the data quality is there and the data is correct and showing what we want it to, who is responsible for having access to what data, ultimately making sure that those rules of engagement are in place for how an organization is using its data. So that could be that a head of sales is responsible for the customer data, head of supply chain owns the inventory data, whatever that looks like. Ultimately, they're the people who are responsible for that data quality and that data usability. Some organizations, they actually form a data governance committee that are a mix of both the business people and the IT people. Ultimately, they're the ones that set these policies and are responsible for making sure that people across the organization know who is responsible for what. As ultimately, when these are when these are put in place and driven forward, it leads to increased data quality and consistency, which then leads to good things with whatever we're doing with that data. The final point from the data ownership and leadership side is making sure that ultimately the leadership is there setting that clear vision of what we're wanting to do with data. So outside of just a broad aim of making better use, it's setting a vision that is clear and it speaks to what we're trying to do. So that can be something like real-time dashboards that show all of our critical metrics accessible to all of our managers. It can be trying to get the 12-month rolling forecasts accuracy to be within a X percentage error. Whatever it is, it's just stating that goal to let the team know this is what we're working towards, this is what we're trying to do when we say we're making better use of our data, and it allows you to measure and track that progress and eventually use that to justify further investment in new tools, new processes, just doing more stuff with that data that we have.
Yeah, that sounds great, Andy. And I think, one of the things we see across all of our customers is you've really got that person that's owning the project, that's driving it, that is the champion, that's excited. As a partner, it really then helps us, right, all the way through the project.
Yeah, and a key thing I want to drive there is it doesn't have to be an IT person. Data can be thought of as an IT domain. It's not. It very much sits across business and IT, and business are the area that are benefiting from using this stuff properly.
Yeah, amazing. And then obviously you're then going to talk around kind of surfacing that value in existing data as another kind of critical piece.
Yeah, it's where we start with making the most use of data, and it's from the strategy side. It's identifying where are the quick wins, what can we do more of with what we've currently got. So a lot of customers they're sitting on a lot of data. The general perception is that maybe the data is not that clean, it's not that great, it's not that accessible. Maybe the case. I guarantee you there's going to be some gold in there that we can quickly access, some insight we can gain that's just helps get started and deliver that quick return on value. So as a starting point, I always recommend starting with a short audit, short brainstorm of each business area to try and identify where we can start. So a good question to ask is what's a decision or cost that if we had better access to data, better insight from that data, we could improve now. That can be around unlocking working capital if we identify slow moving products and do something to speed that up. It could be analyzing the inventory data to identify where's a better place to put that stock across our distribution network, or it could be running some sort of promotion to try and release, do some sort of clearance sale and release capital that's tied up there. It's very much just trying to identify where's something we can quickly do now that will unlock that data. A key thing to consider as well is dark data. So what I mean by this is unstructured data that is sitting across the organization. I did see a stat in Forbes that estimated that of all enterprise data, they think 80% of that is going to be the unstructured stuff. So this is things like customer service emails and chat logs, call transcripts, things that don't necessarily sit within a traditional data warehouse, a traditional ERP system, but are still a lot of insight and a lot of value in there in what it's showing. So as an example of that, you could have customers that are frequently complaining about a particular product's availability. This can flag, is there something we're not doing around stock level availability? Do we need to work with our suppliers to get this to us quicker? Whatever that may be. The idea of it ultimately is just to take that unstructured data, understand what insight it's showing, and try to identify where we can start to either save money, grow revenue, unlock value, whatever that may be. A key part of this is making sure that we, rather than just telling the business, telling people this is what we're seeing, actually show them that. So that can be just spinning up a quick BI dashboard to show we've combined a lot of different data, so say sales, inventory, delivery times. when we've got that dashboard and we can take that to an exec meeting, it's showing people, here's what we're seeing in our current data, here's where we think the opportunity points are, here's areas of concern. It really brings it to life and helps the execs and the top level people see when we talk about data and when we talk about getting better data, here's what that means, here's bringing that to life and moving it from that abstract idea into something they can see and believe. Final point to consider as well is that with the data we've got and the insights we're unlocking, other potentials here to monetize that data to either unlock new revenue streams or try to drive improved margins somewhere else. So that could be if we're feeding back data to our suppliers around end customer demand. It can help them with planning. How do we do this better? What do we do basically to be able to meet that rising customer demand? Doing that could potentially give you a negotiation point to get better rates from that client. We can then look at, do we potentially give our key customers a portal that lets them see their purchase history, consumption trends, all powered by your data, to be able to then strengthen that relationship and just be able to do more from just a customer relationship perspective. Ultimately, it's all around treating data as an asset that can create value, not just as a thing that is that just naturally comes from those transactions and over time. All of these are about setting the stage to have the right people owning the data and driving that value from what you've got to be able to then identify what's the technology we can start to look at to scale these benefits accordingly.
Amazing, thank you, Andy. That's really useful. And funnily enough, as you were sort of talking through that, we had a question from Leah in the chat around that, she's got data everywhere and keeps coming across new sources. Have we got any suggestions on how to find out all of that? And Sinead's sort of answered on our behalf. And it's certainly something we did with Cutwel, which is like looking at the data assessments. I know that you do them kind of day in, day out. Like look at what the existing data landscape looks like and kind of roadmap out from that. And I know that we, Microsoft have significant funding pots to support in that. So Leah, I hope that answers your question. If you need any further information, just do ping again in the chat and we'll be able to answer it.
Yeah, and I'd add to that as well that it's a good place to start is really focusing on what's the outcome we're trying to drive here, what is the actual use case, business challenge, process, whatever we're trying to improve. Look at that and try to work backwards from there of, okay, so what data do we have access to that is part of this? What other data, ideally, if we had that, would make this easier, better, whatever it is? Just start from the business outcome and the value we're trying to drive and work backwards from there would be my recommendation. Amazing, thank you. So kind of moving on from that then, Andy, like roadmap, where do people start? Where do we start these projects? Because these things, you don't know what you don't know. People might be somewhere along this journey. So what does that roadmap look like? What would you recommend? Yes, so I guess the first thing I'd say is that whilst these projects and anything to do with making better use of data, better tooling, it can sound like it's a really chunky project. It's going to take a long time before we start to see that value. That's not always the case. There are things you can do that are quick wins whilst you keep the eye on that longer term, medium term strategy and whatever it is you're trying to do. So absolute starting point though, you need to goes back to my previous point, establish that strong data ownership and strategy. So who's going to be accountable for driving this? If that's not yourself, is it a direct report? Whoever that may be, identifying that key champion and then starting to look at and set measurable objectives. So commit to something like we're going to improve forecast accuracy by 10% in the next year, or reduce working capital we've got held up in inventory by however much by the end of next year. The goals, they can be ambitious, but it's important to have that defined measurable goal that we can then start to push and ultimately start to drive and infuse into the company's culture as we start to talk about using data in meetings, backing up things that people are saying with the data behind it, and really just setting that tone from the top down. From there, starting to look at what those quick wins are. So one area that we see is usually a quick win when customers start to begin this journey is around reporting and being able to speed that up. automate that where we can, start to get that greater insight. Typical one we normally see is around moving from if you're used to doing your reports heavily in Excel, start to use a more modern BI tool that can automate that steps, give the deeper level of insight, and really just start to lay that groundwork. One reason this is usually a good starting point in the Microsoft world, at least, is that a lot of enterprise licenses include Microsoft's BI tool Power BI as part of there. So it could be you already have access to this tooling that you're just not using. So it avoids that additional outlay to get started. Whilst you're getting started with this, though, you need to make sure that we have a look at the data quality and the consistency. Whilst it may not be great, there's probably is stuff we can still do, but we just need to make sure that whatever that first use case is we're starting with, what we're servicing to the wider business is going to be accurate and correct. This could be making sure that we started to look at the master data as well. So if we have things like a customer list, product catalog, just make sure we have a look at that and try to get it as accurate, as up to date as we can, so that we're not servicing the wrong insights, the wrong data at that early stage. Key part from there is making sure that as we roll these projects out, we're empowering and educating the end users and the wider team. This can be formal training and in how to use the tools, but it can also be making sure that you have your enthusiasts and your evangelists on the ground who are helping the wider team to do this stuff, building that community, building the understanding and the insight and the value of what this can bring across your business. Some companies hold internal hackathons, things like that, to try and empower their end users to try and see the best insights they can get from their data, spark that interest. It's ultimately just driving that and that empowerment across the business and making sure that it becomes part of the daily DNA of what the teams are doing. When we're doing this as well, it's important to make sure that we're tracking the value and the impact of whatever it is we're doing, and where we've got those wins, shouting about it and broadcasting it to the wider business. It could be that time saved in creating reports, that's a good one, but it's when we're then looking at if we've managed to reduce that capital tied up in inventory, we shout about that, and just really making sure that anything we're doing here, if we've got an ROI that we're driving and we're improving, we've got to make sure that that's known about, as at the end of the day, if we're doing this stuff, it's got to be for a reason, and it's got to drive that value. One area that is worth considering as well is using external help when needed. So fully appreciate that a lot of teams they're being kept incredibly busy just doing that day to day, and having the time to dedicate to looking at the ways of doing things differently, doing things better, it can be a challenge. So working with Microsoft partners to do that is always going to help. It's going to speed things up. A lot of partners, the BCN included, we have accelerators and things we can do to get you started in this quicker, as well as accessing funding from Microsoft to try to offset some of those costs of getting started. Ultimately, though, we've got to make sure that whatever we're doing, it's understanding that it's an iterative and innovative process. So data and technology moves quickly. Whatever we're building, we've got to keep coming back and making sure that it's still delivering that value. It's still delivering what the business needs it to effectively. Yeah, and then again, just to reiterate it, got to be the champions of your own success here. So where we have the wins, we have the success, we should be shouting about it, we should be celebrating it, and making sure that the wider business knows that these initiatives we're doing, here's the value it's bringing, and here's why it's making your life and your jobs easier.
Excellent, thank you, Andy. And I think the key kind of learning from me when I've been involved in these areas is that it isn't just done. It's not a project that you deliver. It's something that you're constantly refining. As you say, a process might change, or you might bring in a new company or new people, or the tech might change. So these things are constantly refined and updated. And I think in underpinning everything that's being done is you talked about data governance earlier on quite a lot, but is also obviously making sure everything's wrapped in security and making sure that the data is completely secure. We've all seen the news in recent months, so security obviously goes hand in hand. We are now going to hopefully have another poll, if the tech will work on me, and there we go, as if by magic. What is your top priority for the next 6 months? Let's just have a look and see. Yeah, reducing operational costs. Yeah. Yes, with increase of wages, NI, tariffs, reducing our costs absolutely is key. And upskilling, because if people don't understand the tools and how to use them. Excellent. Yeah, so really honing in there really on the operational costs and the upskilling, things that we've kind of highlighted are really critical. So we've just had a comment in from Amber. So key thing that Amber's found with her clients is not limiting expectations to what you believe is possible from Excel. A really good point, actually, Amber. The BI tools can give so much more than Excel, particularly if you're someone like me. As I mentioned at the top of the call, Excel is my nemesis. I am useless at it. Whereas to see an amazing dashboard in Power BI, that's what lights it up for me, to be able to click on my team, see what people are forecasting, see what accounts they manage, it brings it all to life. So I think it's we don't know what we don't know as human beings, right? So to see the kind of art of the possible. So yeah, thanks for that comment, Amber, really useful. Right, so just kind of final then, how do we measure success, Andy? What are the things we're going to look at to go, right, we've identified we've got a data problem, we want to bring all our data sources together, we want to do some quick wins, we want to shout about them, we've got a champion, we know our vision and we've monetized it. How do we actually measure that that's been successful?
Yeah, no problem. So what you can see on your screen here are just some of the core metrics that I believe a data project should be helping to drive, helping to improve. So cost of goods sold is for me the most obvious one, as this is obviously directly affects the gross profit of everything that Wholesale is doing. By using data to drive those procurement decisions, manage suppliers, identify and reduce wastage, each one of those is going to shave a few points off the cost of goods sold as a percentage of the sales. So whilst each one of those is just going to be an incremental gain, it's not going to be a huge change. All of these over time, though, they start to add up. So that initial small gain in percentage across millions of revenue, millions of product lines, is going to be significant and really help to start to drive that profit and that improvement across the business. Looking at things like inventory turnover, it's all about how you can efficiently manage that inventory. So making sure that the safety stock levels are at the right level, you're not stocking out, your products are in the right place at the right time. All of it is about driving that better demand forecasting and just-in-time practices to make sure that you're able to get this as lean as you can, and you're maximizing what you're selling and keeping inventory held and that capital is tied up in those that stock to a minimum. Flip side of that, this of course is managing the stock outright, so making sure that you're not stocking out too soon, not losing that revenue in lost orders and customer dissatisfaction. So being able to improve that forecasting again, so knowing the inventory levels and the demand in real time across all your product lines. This is the sort of thing where when you've got your data all in one place, you've got the analytical capability built on top of that, you're really able to look at that with a much more granular level and start to using it. You can use AI to have that at a SKU level across across your product line. These sort of things that can really again drive the revenue that you've got here and drive the correct results. Next one, again, which I've alluded to, is around forecast accuracy. So being able to understand that data and being able to use that to drive the forecast to get a much more accurate level, spending less time creating those forecasts as well, really just making sure that they are they're driving what the decisions are you make off the back of those forecasts at a much greater level. Last couple of ones, so reporting efficiency, looking at the internal process for how long you're spending and the effort involved with creating these reports. Emma mentioned it earlier around using Excel. It's heavily manual. It can take a lot of time each period, each month to create those reports. If you're able to automate this and reduce the time it takes to do that, you can free up your team's time to add value elsewhere. So rather than doing the same manual things each period, they're adding that value and being able to drive what they do with those decisions, spending less time creating the reports, more time actually doing stuff with them. And the final one to focus on is the on time in full delivery. So making sure that we're using the data to help make sure that the right product's in the right place at the right time, and ultimately you're spending less amount of time rectifying those issues that can occur. Leads to high customer satisfaction, reduced shipping costs, and all the rest of it. All of these kind of things are what you can improve and what you can help drive once you've got your data in the right place. You understand what that data is showing, and you're able to spend more time then focusing on the driving those further insights, driving those analytics and understandings from it.
Excellent.
Yeah, and that's it for these ones.
Okay, amazing. Thanks ever so much, Andy. So we've had a question in from Leah again. How easy, fast is it to move from Excel to a BI tool? And again, thanks for answering, Sinead. So, Rob, feel free to interject as you've had direct experience of this, but the concepts are really similar. It's a very smooth transition, but as we have highlighted, doing that kind of proof of concept pilot and maybe some training interlinked with that is always critical. Is there anything you'd like to add, Rob, from a kind of customer experience of having done that?
Just far easier than you'd imagine. I think Power BI, Microsoft aren't daft, and it's very much a continuation of it. If you've got Excel and you've got Excel reporting, Power BI is very much a continuation of that, and it fits quite seamlessly into that. And as Amber said, once you understand what it's capable of, I think your requirements and as a business, what you're asking of your data just increases. Like we have a saying in here now, but most people that didn't know it before, they now come to us and say, wouldn't it be good if, wouldn't it be good if? And most of the time you can do it, So it's really changed how we look at things and what we're capable of.
Amazing. Thanks, Rob. And Mark, yeah, you'd like to make a comment? We've lost your sound again, Mark. I'm sorry. I don't know why. You've got gremlins today.
Very brief example, if I may. I was working with a client that had actually quite good structure in their data. So they were one step on, but they weren't able to visualize and get that information. They were using a lot of Excel reporting. It took us longer to acquire the Power BI license than to drop the reporting extension into Microsoft BC and expose everything that was happening on the manufacturing floor for that particular business. It was literally instantaneous. And the moment the license was realised, Ops Manager had information on dashboard that they were using and able to manage the business effectively instantaneously. And it was that quick. But they were at a slightly different place because the data was in good order.
Amazing. Thanks for that insight. We've had a couple more questions come through. I'm conscious we've only got 5 minutes left, so we'll do our best, Michael and Chirag, to answer your questions. So guys, is there a way to link our forecasting with supplier lead times to avoid stock outs? I'm going to put you on the spot, Andy, for that one. Are you able to help answer that? And if you can't, that's fine. We can always go back.
No. So that's absolutely something that is possible. So as long as we've got the data that shows what the supplier lead times, that can either be data that's provided by the suppliers, or we look at the historical data of over the past past period, whatever that may be. They've said it will take X time to get here. It actually took Y. We can start to look at that and figure out. So based on what we've seen before and what we've seen in the past, here's how we expect the lead time to be and how that's going to then affect forecasting and the rest of it. As long as we have access to that data, we can bring it into a dashboard and understand what it is that's shown in there and start to be a bit more predictive and forward looking with what we're doing there.
And that's the kind of thing, correct me if I'm wrong, that we could use funding for. So that's the type of thing Microsoft would fund if you're looking to bring a particular data source in and then do something clever with it. It's that type of thing we can unlock funding from Microsoft. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
excellent. And then final question from Chirag. My business has been introduced to data rails, which I feel does something very similar and worthwhile exploring. Does anyone have any experience of that or would like to comment?
Yeah, so I can comment on that one. So data rails, for those who aren't aware, it's a third-party tool that's focused around effectively being an FP&A platform that works quite well with Excel. it does have those capabilities that we've talked about within the Microsoft world. It's the sort of thing we'd be able to do using a mix of their ERP and Power BI. As you say there, it absolutely does a very similar thing to what we've talked today. Yeah, it's a good tool. nothing else really to add there. But yeah, it's absolutely is the sort of use cases we're talking about.
Excellent. So conscious that we're towards the end of our time, so I would like to thank everyone for the questions, everyone that's joined. I hope you found the webinar insightful, and a huge thanks to my panel, to Andy, Rob and Mark, much appreciated. If you do have any further questions, please do get in touch, and good luck on your data journey. Many thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.